let's talk about DMT, and we're not talking about the drug. I was thinking about earlier, like about what we would talk about, and I was thinking about we would definitely talk about DMT, and then I was like, I definitely have to make the caveat. It's not we're not talking about. Do you have to do that with people, or is it just you don't even say, "Hey, I do this DMT thing"? How do you talk to people about it?
It's funny, you're like right on the pulse actually with my thinking about it. I've been brainstorming an alternate branding for
Mm,
it for probably 3 or 4 years now, because some people do. I do get feedback. I've gotten feedback that the words dance and meditation are actually both very scary words for
huh.
most people. Um, Dance probably more scary than meditation. And then of course there's the acronym DMT. And when I created the name, I did think in my head it was like a little kitschy sort of thing, a nod to the substance, but also specifically that we're accessing. DMT, the drug, is known for like a very powerful, very
Mm,
fast, quote, spiritual and/or psychedelic experience. And dance meditation technique gives a very powerful experience for the individual without any substances.
mm-hmm.
So I'm really not a fan of psychedelics. Microdosing, I am, for sure, for certain people, but in general, I'm not a big fan. So I had a mom and her 8-year-old daughter come to class a couple weeks ago, and the 8-year-old loved it. And the mom sent me a message after. She's like, "Oh, my daughter came home and she started drawing, you know, these images, and she's like so happy and had such a great time in class." I said, "Well, send me the images." So she sent them to me, and it was like the letters DMT and like sparkles and rainbow, and I was like, "Oh, I have to change the name," because all I could think about was this kid at school drawing it, and a teacher being like, DMT, like, and then her saying, "Oh yeah, my mom and I did DMT this weekend," and so I have been thinking. And by the way, I'm all ears if you have good ideas that arise as to a possible rebrand. So I'm gonna rebrand it at some point,
Do you have a couple
probably.
ideas, or like a couple leading ideas? Or you can't say
I
you can't
do.
say yet. Like,
I don't know that I would share them, on something where it would go out like that, but I do have some ideas, but honestly, Sam, none of them have like, you know, it's a lot of
struck the right
fear.
nerve.
Yeah, none of them struck the right nerve, and like I have a lot of fear around it, like if it's the wrong thing. You
What
and
what's
it's
your,
third.
what's your fear around like it being too far removed from what people know, or
Yeah, it's a lot of energy and effort to
hmm,
brand and rebrand. I
yeah.
have 13 years of being known as dance meditation technique. Um, there is a modality, I think it started in Europe, called dance movement therapy, and they're older than us, and their acronym is DMT. Their
Hmm.
modality is totally different. They're not the same modality at all. Um, but they really never promoted themselves as DMT either. And I believe you have to actually be a therapist
Hmm.
to get um, certified in that modality. I don't know where I was going with that thought.
Hmm. It's okay. They come and go anyway. Yeah. Thoughts.
They do.
I I really miss going to that class to your class though. I know I went maybe 2 3 times when I was in Detroit. And it was, I mean, it's unlike anything I've experienced since or before, obviously. Because you have this, you facilitate this room where, or do you want to explain a little bit, like, kind of what happens?
I'd
We
love
don't
to
have to
hear
make the
you.
whole,
If you, no, please share your experience.
share my
I'd love
experience.
to hear it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the first time I went, it was scary because, like you also said, more so the dance part than the meditation part. And correct me if I'm getting anything wrong here. I think the idea kind of is that you kind of are creating not the antithesis, but kind of the mirror image of like sitting meditation. I think you're kind of creating a space where people can kind of come in touch with a side of themselves that we don't usually get to be in touch with on like the daily basis. Well, one of the nice things is there's no photos, no videos. It's just like you're in the space with a bunch of people with you. You give some instructions. I think at the beginning we maybe did some warming up yoga, or maybe in the end, I'm not sure, like a warm up or cool down, something like that. I mean, when I think about it, I just think about kind of loud music, running around in circles in the dark, dancing, doing all kinds of things that I don't get to do in my civilized life, and just expressing myself in, I don't want to say animalistic ways, but just kind of it's like an expression of something that doesn't usually come out, and through that you get to access this meditative state that the name then refers to. This was a very non chronological description of what happens, but that's kind of what comes to mind for me. What would you say to that?
I definitely would love to come to Munich or Germany and teach. That would be. I would love to. In fact, I was talking to that DJ. Let me look up his name real quick. I can't. I might screw up this recording, but I'll send it to you later.
Yeah.
I would love to get this to Europe. Yeah, it's interesting you use the word animalistic. And I can see what you mean by that, because there is a space that's created that allows us to be more of our raw, passionate selves. When I think of the animal nature of mind, I think of like the most base element of us. And then survival, the animal mind to me can be very violent. It doesn't have to be, but it's very quick, can be that way. So I think that the class is helping someone access a very base foundational energy in them, but actually spiritualize it. So if there's animalistic humans and then there's spiritual humans, well, what's the difference? Right? So we're working to develop a lot of goodwill. So in the beginning, when you mentioned warm-ups, there are exercises. There's 4 main techniques that I teach, but through warming those techniques up, we're actually warming up the mind. We're warming up the mind to become full of goodwill. Like, I want to help Sam dance. I want to help everyone else here have a good class. I'd like to help the person in the room who's scared of moving feel better moving. I'd like to help the person afraid to use their voice find their voice. And there's a clear path to how I can help them. So I can help Sam find his unique way of moving by not watching you, by keeping my mental attention off of you. That's how I give you support to find your dance. I can help Sam find his voice by, when I hear you make a sound, I make some sound back, so you're not feeling alone. There's a method to it, right? So we're moving our bodies, we're moving our voices, and we're moving our minds. There's a principle at work where you cannot reach higher mental qualities like generosity, concentration, goodwill, without building from what's real. So if what's real in the room is that everyone's afraid of moving, everyone's afraid of using their voice, we're all told, most of us are told from the time we're born, sit still and be quiet.
Yeah.
Right? We get into spiritual practices, whether it's whatever, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, whatever it is. And oftentimes we're also told, sit still and be quiet. So you are correct that if there's a mirror image happening. Dance meditation technique is actually the exact principles of seated meditation, except instead of sitting still, we're moving a lot. Instead of being quiet, we're practicing using our voices. Instead of trying to not think, we're practicing thinking thoughts of goodwill. We're practicing energizing a mind that has ferocious positivity, that really wants what is best for me and everyone in that room for that time. So we all agree, dance is good for us. We know it's good for us. the National Library of Medicine states that dance is healing, unequivocally states it is a healing thing. Yet, I don't know what it's like in Germany, but you lived in Detroit for a while. So when you come to dance events in Detroit, you know, is anyone dancing? Not much.
You got to be inebriated, like.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because the inhibitions come down. But there's actually a way to get there without substances. So it's not animalistic in the sense of a total lack of order. I was just having this debate / discussion with a friend of mine just yesterday that there's a good argument that there really is no such thing as chaos. That there's just different types of order. Right? So you go to a traditional dance floor in Metro Detroit, and you could say it's like chaos because no one's dancing. People spend money on the door. People spend money on their drinks. They got dressed up. They got their friends invited. They're at the show they wanted to go to. No one's dancing. What's happening? This looks like it's kind of chaos. It doesn't make sense. But there's actually an order. There's a default order. And the default order is that fear is dominating. That fear is based in wisdom. People don't want to be made fun of. People are afraid of being made fun of. People are hoping to be accepted and fearing being rejected. No one wants to end up on someone else's social media, being filmed. So the order that arises is a protective one that's meant to protect the person's feelings. But then there's another type of order when there is what I would say like a higher level of awareness, or you could also call it better judgment, good judgment. You know, Sam, if you and I went out, if I was in Berlin and we went out to some great DJ and we spent time and money doing it and getting, dressed up and going out and buying, food and drinks, is it not a better judgment for us to also dance and to this music, right? I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but the tendency to ignore discomfort and fear or avoid discomfort and fear produces default order, which generally includes expressions like a contraction, particularly creative contractions. And as that relates to dance and movement, the person's not moving, and they're certainly not using their voice. When there's a higher level of good judgment and clear thinking and mutual support, they can access something higher. They can move. They can use their voice. And not only are they moving and using their voice, but their movement and their voice becomes like a supportive expression. Have you ever been dancing out and there's someone, like when you look at that person and they look at you, like you lift each other up without even talking?
Yeah.
That's what we're practicing.
Mm-hmm.
So DMT might have music and it might have dance and it might, but it's actually what I'm trying to do is help myself and other people learn how to get our mind warmed up into a place that when we look, our look is uplifting ourselves and other people. And that we have the critical thinking abilities to know what to lift up and what not to. Because not everything should be lifted up. Not everything should be supported. Not everything's good for us. So I feel like I'm giving a long-winded answer. But to summarize, dance meditation technique is a concentrated meditation. And the techniques take the individual, if to the degree the individual is sincerely applying them, their mind is no longer flowing outwards towards what is this person doing? What is this person's dance? What's going on over here? It's flowing inward. And it gives them access to an experience that's beyond hope and fear. There's the thought of, am I being accepted? Do I look cool? am I dancing sexy? Does this person think I'm cool or do they think I'm lame? That's not there. It's just
Yeah.
not there. And what I hear from students and what I know directly from my own experience is there is something about that experience that is incredibly refreshing, almost like, finding fresh water, when all you've been drinking is salt water. It produces some sort of dynamic relief. In all of the meditation traditions that I've studied or practiced, art and creativity flourish in them.
Hmm.
And they flourish in them as a direct byproduct of meditation. So once we start learning how to access that space in us that's beyond hope and fear, there's this immense creative potential there. You're doing your podcast. You probably have hope and fear, right? Hope, people like it. Fear, they won't. Am I right?
Yeah.
Even this interview, like, well, I hope this goes well with Mike. I have the same thing. I hope this goes well. I hope I make sense. I hope people find it beneficial. I hope, Sam enjoys talking to me. I hope, there's all this hope and fear.
Yep.
But when a good conversation's happening, you and I have had so many, right? We've had so many without ever having anything recording us.
Yeah.
And when we have those, we're locked in with each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I making sense?
Absolutely.
So when you introduce this other element like this, there can be more hope and fear, and it can make locking in more difficult. And I think some of the best podcasts and content creators are people who are capable of getting into that state despite increased hope and fear. So it's a real honor and pleasure to teach it. It feels like I can help people feel a little better. And even though it's temporary, they might go home and life is just as miserable and difficult as it always was. But at least for 2 hours in their week, they got to experience being supported by a group of people, feeling themselves, feeling their body, feeling their voice, accessing the joy of dance, which is inherent in dance. There's something in it. It is like, we talk about biohacks or life hacks. Dance is one of the fastest ways to feel joy.
Yeah.
I'm convinced if you had a group of people who are subacute depressed, they're not in acute depression, which might require a substance intervention, dance is the fastest way to get them to feel better and more alive again. I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. That's okay. That's what podcasts are for, Michael, how did you end up teaching something like this? Like, give me some little anchors in your life that made you interested, first of all, in spirituality, in maybe religions. I remember when I met you, it was at a kind of crucial time in my life. I was deconstructing my Christianity, and I remember one of the things you said to me that was really helpful was you encouraged me not to kind of throw out the baby with the bathwater. You were like, yeah, there's stuff you need to deconstruct, and maybe you're going to change your mind on some of these things about the fundamentalist Christianity that I grew up with. But you said there's a lot of value still in at least some of the things I learned. And I think you gave me this warning or this encouragement to not throw everything away that I had grown up with. And I think that was really helpful. But how did you get interested in these things? Why are you interested in spirituality? Why are you interested in meditation? Where does that come from for you?
So as a young man, I from the age of maybe 12, 10, I started having a lot of struggles with my life, and I ended up in the mental health system. I tried to take my life at 15, and almost did. And that was an important experience, because when I woke up from that in the hospital, I had this very clear sense, very clear knowing that dying wouldn't help. The dying wasn't going to end it. I just had this very strong knowing about that. But that didn't stop the struggle I was in. And I went through a lot of hardships, including being in a lockdown facility. People, I don't know if people in Europe or Germany have things like this, but in America, it's kind of well known that there's these weird schools out west where kids are picked up in the middle of the night and kidnapped from their home and sent to these schools or tricked into going to them. Schools are pretty abusive. The one I went to was very abusive. And there was a gentleman there, one of the teachers, and he gave me a book called Journey to Ixtlan by Carlos Castaneda. And so here I am in this lockdown facility as like a 14, 15-year-old, scared, very traumatized, and very much wanting to get out and couldn't. And then I'm reading this book, and I read, the minute I opened Journey to Ixtlan, I read the whole thing all the way through. In fact, I had to go, because they do lights off at 9 p.m., so I had to go to the bathroom where the lights were allowed to be on in the bathroom, and I read all night sitting on the toilet reading this book. And Carlos Castaneda talks a lot about lucid dreaming practices, how to wake up in your dreams. And so I looked at that as like a ticket to getting out of the place. Like, I couldn't leave there physically, but I could at least at night explore. And so I started to very seriously practice lucid dreaming, and had immediate experiences with it that were significant to me. One of them kind of frightening, but overall significant. And I would say that my real serious interest in the spiritual path started there. And kind of at the core of it was like, how do I get out of this suffering? And here's a way out. And then I escaped that place, which was its own thing, story for another time maybe. And a year or two later, I kept reading, I kept studying, I kept practicing. And I thought I knew, I was learning things, and I would talk about death a lot. Ever since I was a kid, death was very scared me a lot. I was always very aware of it and very nervous about it. And my grandmother was dying of a brain tumor when I was 18, and I got to be with her on her deathbed. And at that time leading up to that, I would talk about death a lot, like we're all going to die. And it was very conceptual. Mm-hmm. But on her deathbed, something happened, and it was accompanied with a lot of very unusual, nervous system experiences. Sort of a discomfort that is almost impossible to explain. But I had this realization of impermanence, that everyone I loved, everything I knew would vanish, and not just someday, but any moment. It was like the most profound mental anguish I had ever experienced. And I'd experienced a lot, but this one felt unfixable. I felt like I was having a clarity that no one around me understood. And I'm sure to the people around me, I looked like I was having, a psychological break. I was crying all the time. And I was having these experiences of energy coming up my spine and going through my hands, and really uncomfortable, extremely uncomfortable. And it would not stop. And there was acute, profound panic attacks where I would lose my vision. I couldn't see, I couldn't hear. But because of my earlier experiences in the mental health field, and that school in particular, I was vehemently against psychiatric medication. So I wasn't using any of that to try to work with this really awful mental experience I was having. It was like being in a mental desert. Like, for example, a piece of chocolate cake used to be like, oh, this, I'll feel better. You know, I'll have this cake, I feel better. I'll do this thing, I'll feel better. It was like nothing could budge this feeling of imminent loss. And when she died, she would come to me in my dreams. And I was having extremely vivid dreams that she was in incredible distress. And she was asking me for help, and I was trying to help her in my dreams. I mean, terrifying. It was super terrifying. And I would try to explain it to people, like, you know, we die any minute. Like, there's no guarantee that 5 minutes from now, anything will be the same. I'll be here, you'll be here. And people would say, yeah, but you're 18 years old, you have your whole life ahead of you. And all I would hear is, oh, this is how this person deludes themselves into avoiding the truth. The truth is, it doesn't matter if you're 18 or you're 8 or you're 1 or you're 80. It's like this anytime. And so I had this like clear perception of how people fool themselves and cover up and suppress and hide the reality of impermanence, which also is kind of like terror, like hiding the terror of life. It's not there, you know, or it comes later. And because it comes later, we'll be fine now. You know, it became clear to me, like, whether you're a terrible person, whether you're a great person, whether you're in between, every single person is dealing with the terror of existence. It's like, how are they dealing with it? And at the time, I also wondered if maybe I had lost it, you know, because no one seemed to understand what the hell I was saying. It was super clear to me, but the people around me, it was like they were at a loss. And then someone gave me, not someone, this woman, Susan, wonderful woman, Susan, she gave me the book, The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche. And when I started reading that book, that was when the tears of like total despair started to become tears of gratitude and hope. Because I'm reading about this culture of people that exactly understand what I had experienced. That almost the foundation of their culture is built on the realization of impermanence. And that there was this thing called enlightenment, which again was the escape, right? So I'm stuck in the school. I want to get out of the school. Lucid dreaming, that's my way out. Let's do that. You know, then grandma dies and, oh my God, I'm stuck in eternal loss. I'm stuck in eternal loss. That realization of impermanence also created a fear of eternity that was so scary. It was scarier than death. You know, and before I didn't think anything could be scarier than death, or a painful death, a brutal death, you know, whatever. But then it started to dawn on me, like, actually this eternity thing is far more terrifying. You love people, you lose them.
And eternity
forever.
in what way? Like that you continue to be eternal somehow, or eternity in what way? Or that loss itself is eternal and just everything is impermanent? Or
yeah, like consciousness does not snap. It doesn't, like,
okay.
Conscious awareness is eternal. And you are consciously aware and a witness eternally to this appearance and disappearance. Whoever you love, they vanish. Whoever, you know, whatever goal you attain, it dissolves. eternity in the sense of, yeah, this body will dissolve and disappear, but the awareness doesn't. And again, I don't know if that's actually true or not, but I am sharing with you that I had this. This is what the thought was. It was very, very terrifying. So, reading about what the Tibetans, how they viewed life, just so different than American culture, how they viewed death, that they had practices for how you could care for a loved one that passed. The grief and the loss in the mind of the person left behind, it's not just stuck in you. It's not something you just, you can still love this person. You can do things. You can fast for them, for example. Someone you loved passed, tragically or not, and you love them and you loved loving them. And where are they now? How can I love them? I want to give them this love still. Well, you can. You can light an altar. You can sit and meditate for them. You can fast for them. You could give money to someone who needs it, and in your mind dedicate that benefit to them. You could take a marathon and all that energy and all that effort going towards them. There's a way you can work with your mind. So that beginning of the spirituality for me was at that school. Well, maybe even prior to that, my mother and I prayed every night as I was a little kid. So I would say it was with her as a little child. And then the big thing hit with my grandma. And that impermanence experience was so thorough that anything other than obtaining enlightenment seemed like a complete waste of time. And so my effort to meditating was with that level of urgency. Like, I'm checking out of here any moment. And if I don't get a handle of how to work with my mind. So the Tibetans, at least some of them, really stress thinking about impermanence. To think about it, to really analyze it. Look at the situation you're really in. Okay, so this book, right? So then I started doing sitting meditation. And I did it like, hardcore, hours. I would sit. And I was like shaking because my mind and my emotions were so pent up. I was doing it, but it wasn't calm. It was very disheveling. And I met a teacher, a Czechoslovakian woman, very eccentric woman, wonderful woman. And her main teacher, who is a very well-known Qigong, master, that's what they called him in the Chinese tradition. He was, in every sense of the word. And she started teaching me how to use what the techniques were for movement meditations, how to work with your emotional body, how to blow off some stress and steam, and then how that can help you actually sit. And it's so simple. It's like if you know dogs, if you want to train your dog to do different tricks, you don't train it, you don't leave it in a cage for a week and then let it out of the cage and try and train it. You run it. No, it goes to the park. You run it. You feed it. You give it a bath. You care for the base energy of the dog. And then once it's starting to calm down, because its basic energies have been cared for, it's now trainable. So what I started to learn is that Dharma, or the spiritual path, is us learning how to train our own minds. And that the good news is nothing is permanent. There was a good news to this that I didn't know at the time. And the good news is that horror that I felt, that terror, that's also impermanent. For example, someone comes to my class, they're afraid of moving. They're scared. They're going to be made fun of. I don't know how to dance. I don't know what I'm doing. That fear they're feeling, that's impermanent. And within the 2 hours of my class, they come to directly realize that it's not real. I mean, it's real in the sense that it was there, but there's also something else. So they go from feeling this, scared, to like, oh my God, I feel amazing, and smiling, and sometimes laughing, and crying, like with relief. That tight contraction and fear is not permanent. It's a result of cause and effect. So, another quick story. This will make sense. This will eventually make sense. I hope when you edit this, the thing will come through and there's like a clear, helpful message. Okay.
No
So
doubt.
when the eternity thought was terrorizing me, I remember going to Gaelic Rinpoche and he was teaching, and I went up to him. It was when I first got to know him, and I said, I can't stop thinking about eternity, and it's terrifying me. What do I do? And he just looked at me and he goes, just stop thinking about it. And at the time, I felt so disappointed in that answer. Like, what a thoughtless answer. Like, I just told you I can't stop thinking about it. It doesn't fucking help me, And it was like 20 years later, it dawned on me, where he was coming from was a place where what we think about is our choice. Maybe there was a disconnection between his understanding and his, well, there was a huge difference. I mean, this guy was like Jedi level master, but in his mind, he had come to the realization that you can work with your thoughts. You can, if a thought's arising, it's not permanent. We have autonomy, but that autonomy is lost on a lot of us because we're not taught about it. A lot of people right now are dealing with severe anxiety and depression. And those thoughts, those anxious and depressed thoughts, tell us that they're permanent. They tell us, I'm going nowhere. This is the reality. The reality is permanent anxiety. The reality is permanent depression. Give up. Those are lies. It's empirically not true. You can measure it. You can do experiments to show how it's not true. Chogyam Trungpa has a very famous saying. He says, the bad news is you jumped out of a plane without a parachute. And the good news is that there is no ground. Yeah, it's terrifying. Oh my God, I'm so terrified. I'm falling. Yeah, but you're never going to hit the ground. So you do have time to learn how to fly. During my practice and exploration, which again was accompanied with like super intense severity, I practiced all kinds of things from all different types of teachers and consumed every bit of knowledge I could find, audio, book, meeting elders, building relationships with elders. And throughout that process, I started to discover that there was like a principle at work. Remember those horrible feelings I told you I was having with my nervous system? When I started working with Safi and Gabriel, the Czechoslovakian woman and the Qigong instructor, that's when I started to have these really beautiful experiences with my nervous system, where like the fear and the spiky, uncomfortable, zapping electrical thing started to become this warm wave, warmth. And it was through my work with them that I had a realization, and I understood a principle. And I knew in that moment that it happened, I would teach, but I would teach other people how to experience it. But I had no idea when, I had no idea how it would look. The idea of dance meditation technique never occurred to me. I never thought prior to that I would ever teach anything. I never wanted to teach anything. In fact, I never even wanted to teach DMT. I only did it because Safi left Michigan and our practice group dissolved, and she was teaching like something that would not look at all like DMT, but in principle it was the same thing. And so I started to go around town trying to find other studios or people who were teaching something like this, and I realized no one's teaching this. And I also realized like very few people knew this. So then I started teaching because that was the only way I could practice with a group, because doing it with a group is uniquely different than doing it alone. And there's definitely a special benefit when there's a group of people. So long story short, it was a very brutal birthing process.
How did you know? You said earlier you grew up praying with your mom, I'm assuming you were praying to. Were you praying to the Christian
Jesus.
God or to Jesus?
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah.
So exactly. So how? That's what I assumed. So why in your struggles do you think did you turn towards kind of maybe the Eastern way of looking at it? Was it because of the book you received
I think
while
it
you were
was
in the
because of the book.
oh,
I think it was because of the book I received,
okay.
and also the experience I was having was not being effectively addressed by the
Mm,
Christian influences around me. Their answers and their solutions were not effectively addressing this issue
okay.
for me, for my personal taste. But as I started to learn more and more about different religious practices and spiritual groups, I started to see that there is a principle at work,
Mm,
right? There's a principle. There's the outer expression, and then there's the principle that's behind it. So as a little guy with my mom, the outer expression was, we're praying to Jesus.
mm-hmm.
Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. God bless. Mommy, Daddy, Erica, Carrie, Jimmy, Michael, on, and then we would just go on naming. Um, well, what's the principle there?
Mm,
Is that we are speaking to what we believe is a higher power. We are facing the truth that
mm,
if we may not wake up, and we are wishing our loved ones well. When you and I spoke about your Christianity, it's like there's so many beautiful things. When you have faith, it doesn't matter if you call that faith Jesus, Buddha, Brahma, whatever, Hashem, whoever the higher figure is, or the greater potential. That's the principle. The principle is you are deferring. You recognize there is something greater than you.
mm,
That's one principle. Whatever God it is that you're praying to. Now, those different people will say, yeah, well, the difference actually is that, is that Buddha doesn't exist or isn't real, and Jesus is, or Jesus isn't real, and Buddha
mm-hmm.
does exist, and whatever. But they're not looking at it from the standpoint of a technique.
Mm,
The Christian technique
okay.
of devotion, and that devotion being practiced through song and prayer and study, and the way that you live your life, produces very real, very beneficial results.
Is it fair to say that what I'm kind of seeing you do is like you you recognize that there's a process that is more important than maybe the ideology that might be driving the process. Like you're recognizing the you call it technique or whatever, but you're seeing the process, like the happening or the way in which maybe one practices their faith, the way that that instantiates in their life is more important than maybe the actual ideology behind the thing. Like maybe if person A believes in the Bible in like a literalist way, maybe that's not so important as much as how that helps them deal with things. Is that would that be fair to say? Or it or do you or is it also important to you that like, okay, this is actually this part of the spirituality that I'm investigating actually has like truth to it, in the sense that not only is it helpful and not only is it helping me cope and deal with impermanence and so forth, but it's actually, I don't even know if ideologically true is like an oxymoron or if that makes sense, but it's actually like a true dogma or something like that. Does that make sense where I'm going with that? Or
I think so. I'm hearing you say, like, is everything written in this Bible literally true? You know,
well, I know we both don't
is
believe that,
Buddha,
but
well, you know, honestly, uh, that's a debate for a different time. The the
okay.
the the the, uh, the New Testament's one thing, the Old Testament's something else. But
Yeah.
If someone is dying of thirst in a desert and there is actual water there, and they find it and they drink it, that actual solution and that satiation is what matters. If it's an illusion and they drank it and it made them feel better and they're dying anyhow, that's still good. If the water is real, did it come from Jesus? Did it come from Hashem? Ultimately, it did come from God. When you understand God to be that which is responsible, that is which the base layer of the base layer of existence. You know, I think you and I have had this debate. Like, I used to, when I was younger, I would love debating Christians, and you know, I stopped doing that because I realized that if someone has faith and you shake their faith, that's not a good thing. Even if technically I might be right. You know, it's actually more, in my opinion now, at my 44 years old, I would never do that. I would try to strengthen their faith. We are talking on two computers. You're in Germany. I'm here in Detroit. Human beings with resources, intelligence, technology created these devices to allow us to do this. No amount of time, no amount of miscellaneous substances over a period of time will form themselves into this technology. They have to be created. And here we are, biomechanical human beings, maybe more complex than these machines, and we think that just chaos and time created us. There's no way. There are higher powers. There are ones that are very unfriendly, and maybe there are definitely ones that are friendly too. So, to me, it's a lot less important whether Buddha was really there or whether Jesus was really there, whether Jesus is the Son of God or not, whatever, or whether Buddha was fully enlightened or not, whether my current teachers are fully enlightened or not, is a whole lot less important to me than what impact is this having in my life. Like one of my main teachers, Amma, some of her students say that she's God. You know, I don't need her to be God. I don't believe that she is God, and I don't need her to be for her positive influence on my life to be what it is, which is immensely positive. What is it happening in my mind stream as I practice this? Do I become more generous, more patient, more caring, more disciplined, more focused, more loving? Do I become a better doormat? Do I become more tyrannical? What are the results? And the results speak to the truth, in my opinion. You know,
Yeah,
does that make sense? Are we making?
it does make sense. I think this speaks to like attention that I felt when I was kind of deconstructing my faith. Because the reason I'm also asking this is at the time I was recognizing that there was a difference between, or that there was a distinction to be made between utility and truth. And even though what you're saying, I think a lot of the time, um, when something is working, when there is utility, it does point to some truth. It does point to, okay, something's working, right? So there has to be something that this practice is guiding me towards that has truth or something like that. But I did realize that to me, like the way I grew up, a lot of absurdity was justified by the overall picture being beneficial, if that makes sense. Like a lot of the things that I grew up to believe and that I was taught to believe, again within the Christian framework, I felt like a lot of the people that were practicing, like in my church and stuff, they were there because it gave them utility, because it gave them purpose, because it gave them it made their lives better, long story short. But it also made them accept a lot of things that would seem absurd if you took a little bit of a step backwards, which I did. Um, and I don't think that's exactly what you're saying. I don't think you're saying, okay, it doesn't matter what is true. Like, if it's helping you, it's helping you.
Oh yeah,
Or is it?
that's definitely not what I'm saying. So in that case, right, if that individual, so everywhere in life, here's another principle. There's bait and there's hooks.
Hmm.
Everything. Our podcast, what's the bait? We get to talk to each other. We get to, I get to share about DMT. You get to have content for your thing. We also both like learning and growing and challenging. You and I both like mental, it's not really sparring. It's almost like mental mutual analysis. There's that, right? Well, what are the hooks? Between us, this will get, it's hard to, there's really no hook in this one, really. I mean, it's like, what is it? You can edit it the way you want. You put it wherever you want. I get to share it. But when you're talking about spiritual communities, there can be hooks in all, even in the ones that I attend and I love to. I know what the hooks are. So if you don't know what the hooks are in any given situation, a friendship, there's bait and there's hooks. A romance, there's bait and there's hooks. A job, there's bait and there's hooks. If you don't know what the bait is and you don't know what the hooks are, you are hooked 100%. So someone who's in that church and is like, okay, this is so beautiful and I have a community and I have purpose and I have vision, I feel inner strength, but they're asking me to believe this thing that my critical thinking will not let me believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then part of that hook is that if you don't believe that nonsense, then you lose all the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
But God gave me critical thinking. And I'm supposed to appreciate and honor the gifts God gives me, of which critical thinking is one. Therefore, my critical thinking should result in increased faith. It should strengthen my faith. You sit and you sing songs about asking a higher power for strength to live your life, asking a higher power for the inner strength to face fear, asking a higher power for the strength to be a good human. You will get it. It will come. Your spirits are lifted higher than if you're listening to a song that's full of negative, despondent thoughts. So I'm in the church and they're giving me the juice. There are some groups, they know the juice, they know what we need, they know how to give you that water in the desert, but they just put all these sneaky hooks in it. There's a way that you can always take the bait off the hook. And you still get that juice of life. And you go, oh yeah, they're wanting me to abandon the gift of critical thinking. It's very sad when someone loses their faith because some person or group had a hook in their faith. And they felt like, well, if I take this hook out now, I don't have faith. No. Does Jesus need to be the only Son of God for you to value the teachings? Does he need to be the literal, only biological Son of God?
Biological Son of God is crazy too.
Right. Does he need to be? There's no way to ever prove it. And you can say you have faith, but what does the faith in that really even matter? Because he's talking about a way of life. Does that way of life work? What happens when you live that way of life? In the Tibetan Buddhist thing, they have guru devotional, Vajrayana practices, where the guru is all perfect. You never question anything they say. They say something, you do it. Well, that's perfectly ripe for exploitation. I mean, it's perfect. Right. It's like the greatest mind control ever. And if that leader is a heartfelt, inspired, enlightened being, the goodwill and the beauty that can flow from that relationship is profound. If they're a little bit of a predator, oh man, it's bad news. So even with my teachers, I walk a fine line of devotion and trust, but always keeping the gifts of critical thinking, trying to get them sharper and sharper, never dropping them. And if someone were to tell me you have to drop this critical thinking, I'd probably be like, well, I can love and appreciate you for items 1 through 8, but items 9 and 10, I'm leaving. I'm not. And you're still a beautiful person. I still love you, and there's still all this value.
Yep.
So a lot of Christian communities, Buddhist communities, Hindu communities, get into this all or nothing thinking. You're not aware of the principle of hooks and bait. People come to my class. What's the bait? Oh, relief, emotional release. You're going to have these benefits. What's the hook? Well, you pay me some money. You come to class, right? That's about it.
Yeah.
But for the people who have like profound experiences in class, if I were to, I could add other hooks. I could be like, oh, well, this experience you're having, that's because of my energy, because you're around the guru, my energy is giving you, right. And I can tie their truth to me, And that's very old.
So,
I don't
Michael,
know how much more I want to say.
I have to ask you, do you have a couple more minutes? Yeah. Okay. You mentioned already kind of that you believe in God, and you mentioned that God is, in your view, the kind of underlying principle or the ground reality, I think you said. Is that correct? Like so far? Okay. To me, like this idea of God is obviously it's endlessly fascinating, and you can talk about it in so many different ways and facets. But I always like to ask people because I no longer can claim that I actively believe in God. I'm kind of like agnostic about it, even though I'm very interested in it. So when someone does say they do believe in God, like I always want to ask them a little bit to paint me a picture. Like, do you believe that it is like an agent, kind of, in the sense that they have the power to do things? Because earlier you described God as like, oh, God gave you the intellect. I think you alluded to the fact that you might be skeptical about I don't know if you're skeptical about evolution, but you think maybe there was some kind of creative designer who maybe started everything. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, when you respond. But yeah, so do you think of God as like an agentic being, if that makes sense? A being that intervenes in this world? Or do you have maybe more of I think maybe more deistic viewpoints hold that, okay, God exists, but maybe God doesn't interfere in this world. There's like pantheism and panentheism, where kind of the whole universe, the sum of everything, kind of adds up to God. Maybe we're like, we are kind of the universe introspecting on itself, and maybe that is the process of God. There's so many different viewpoints, right? And you're aware of them. I don't think you're a monotheist, right? I don't think you think kind of a Christian viewpoint is accurate, right? But maybe you do. I don't know. Can you paint a little bit of a picture for me, if you can? Or is it to you, is it
Yeah.
ineffable and you don't even know? You have no clue.
No, I can paint a little picture, and it's ineffable. It's ineffable, and I can paint a little picture, which
Okay.
speaks exactly to my answer. There's like the relative God, right? There's relative and absolute, I think. On the relative level, there are beings, who we would call them like little g gods, like it's not the big God, but they're gods. If you met one, you'd probably call it the big G, because like there's probably no joke beings. And they can create things. Just like we're creating robots that function just like human beings. And at this pace of development, we'll be creating human beings. So there are creator beings. We are creator beings. There's and there seems to be a spectrum. That's observable. That's observable fact. So does it go to say that there are higher level creator beings that can create planets, universes and solar systems? Well, I don't personally know the answer, but I know here there are creator beings, and they create things, and we can create incredible stuff. Then there is like the base unfathomable, but there is order. There's order. An oak tree, like you asked about evolution, do I believe in it? Well, yes and no. An oak tree is never going to become a fish. It's not even going to become a willow tree. Something made it. The Buddhists, my understanding, my very limited understanding, is that the Buddhists are saying that everything is coming spontaneously from emptiness. So spontaneous form, which is also something that's observable, particularly with dance. You can see that you don't think you know how to dance? Well, within 1 hour, I can show you that you know your own dances, and you will experience spontaneous form in the form of your own spontaneous dance, arising out of what? Coming from where? Salsa, tango, bachata, ballet, whatever other dance forms, where did they come from?
Same with thoughts, right? They just arise.
Where are thoughts coming from? Still, there's an order. Like, I've been struggling with cigarettes, for about 3.5 years right now,
You just have that off camera.
I do, I know. I was like, I might as well. I'm probably going to smoke a cigarette in this interview. So I've been struggling with it, right? So that battle, there's still order in there. There's a reason why there's a struggle. All the meditation in the world, you can still have tremendous hardships. Let me promise you, I couldn't count how many hours of workshops and being a student and teaching and studying and practicing, and I still have all kinds of problems. But I can at least now see an order to them. An order to them. And also the reality that they are transformable. But we end up in a fight to transform them. That's the spiritual fight. More and more, I love the Jewish thought of, the fight, the struggle. Because if you think about it, anyone trying to build anything is engaging in a struggle. And people who are like, oh, well, best life, no struggles, effortless building, like, fuck that. They have never built anything.
Yeah.
Those people have never built anything. Or everything was handed to them. You want to become a weightlifter, but your mental momentum is being lazy. You have a fight ahead of you. And what's crazy is you can practice asking for support from a higher power. And to the degree you have faith, you can receive help. That's provable.
I'm going to try this.
That's provable. You say you don't believe in a God, but, that boils down to the definition of a God. You have a good heart. You have a good heart. You strive for, and correct me if I'm wrong, you strive for living a better life and bringing good things to people, right?
I'd like to think so, yeah.
Why not just become like a drug dealing murderous, if there's no God and there's no punishment and there's no right and wrong?
Well, some kind of karma is probably still real, yeah. It doesn't have to be magical. It's beneficial to be good, quote unquote.
Why?
Because it's good for it's like karma. It's even if you don't believe in karma in like the religious sense or whatever, or you don't have to believe in reincarnation or anything, but if I'm even in the most selfish interpretation possible, being quote unquote good is beneficial for me. And I'm not saying that's my life philosophy. I'm just saying if I'm nice to my neighbor, he might help me out in like 3 months or something if I have a weird problem and nobody's there, and he wouldn't help me out otherwise, and that kind of thing.
There's also the immediate emotional and mental landscape in our minds. People talk about karma and it's like, oh, this person's such a piece of shit. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they hustle people. When are they going to get their karma? Because they have the pretty girlfriend or the pretty boyfriend, or they have the fancy car, or they have the money. But they don't realize that the interior life of that person is horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And this person, like if your interior life is always a storm, you might not even believe in the existence of like a sunny day. I'm talking about on the interior, right? And if you're lucky enough to meet someone or encounter something that shows you what the sun and what the blue sky looks like, that's it. Yeah. You're forever changed. You're forever, I mean, I have goosebumps even saying that, like you're forever changed. Because now you know there is something else. Mm-hmm. By being those of us who have suffered and been in hell realms, like real, no joke, hell realms, when we've received the love and care and help from another person, you know, the question of does life have meaning, or does life have purpose? That question's done.
Yeah.
Of course it has fucking purpose. Mm-hmm. There's some person out there who needs help right now, and you providing that help for them means everything in the world. And there's a warmth in the minds of people who want to be good. And I don't mean good in a naive sense. I don't mean good in the sense of simplicity and I said the right thing, you know. Yeah. For deeper, higher reasons, they build and gain access to mental and emotional experiences that are profoundly beautiful. Mm-hmm. Profoundly beautiful. And the Tibetan Lamas in particular, if you look at a lot of them, their faces, especially when they're dying, are radiant. How are they facing death with such joy? How is this a thing? Mm-hmm. You know, there's this one rabbi I love, Manis Friedman, and he gave a talk about narcissism. And he said, you know, narcissists, people say and I might be quoting him wrong, but something like this. My understanding was, he's saying people say narcissists are selfish. He said, but actually a selfish person does what's in their best interest. A narcissist is constantly doing what's not in their interest at all. It's not so. We want to be truly selfish people in the actual real sense of things. The relationship you and I built, you know, there's care, we have a connection, you know. I would never want you to think, oh, this man I met in Detroit and I felt a connection with, like, some time went by, he doesn't care that I exist, you know, like, you know, it's like, no, you have a place in my heart, you know, and you've never been, you've been nothing but wonderful, and in my experience.
Likewise.
So, yeah, you know, so it's like, caring for that matters. And look at this beautiful conversation we get to have years later. One of the karmic fruitions of intentional care. Yeah. Things matter. Things matter. Life matters. Care is important. People say, oh, I just don't care. I'm just not going to give a fuck. Oh, my God. That's the exact opposite. You want to go. You want to care. And is there a bearded guy in the sky, Sam, that's going to come and punish you if you don't do it if he wants? There might be, actually. That might be. If the whole idea of like cosmic beings are real, then some of them are gangsters and some of them punish people for not obeying. And they have real power like that. That could be a real thing. And also, is there something more powerful than that?
The way, and you have always done this as long as I've known you, like you talk about lowercase g gods or beings in a way where it seems like you've experienced them or something, like, because otherwise you wouldn't be talking about them with I don't want to say certainty, but you know, near certainty maybe or something. The problem is for someone like me, okay, um, I used to be, you know my story, but I used to be a believer, like a fundamentalist Christian believer. Like I used to believe in angels, demons, blah blah blah. The bearded guy, not the bearded guy, but
Yeah, yeah.
um, until I was like 21, and but I never had like an experience even then, even though I used to believe in those things. I never had an actual experience that would make me believe those things. Like I just believed them because I believed them, and when I stopped believing them, it was a rough transition, but it wasn't. Um, I didn't have to like all of a sudden explain something in my life that I couldn't explain now because I didn't believe in non-material beings or something. If anything, I feel like my worldview got simpler and easier to explain because I didn't have to explain. Because at least in the Christian worldview, it's like you have the problem of evil, the problem of suffering, because you have this uppercase G God, right? That in theory is in control of everything, and then you have all these issues like how do you explain kids with cancer, blah blah blah, the usual examples. I don't think that's your worldview, but if you do, or since you do believe in like lowercase G gods or beings, I think maybe one time you called them helpers, or I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm just now getting flashbacks to previous conversations we've had. Um,
Us, maybe we were talking about spirit helpers, non-physical beings that are
yeah,
helpful, and the ones that aren't. I mean, you certainly have encountered demons. I can promise you that, because some people are so close to it that they could be considered demons themselves. Anyone who's ever had to be in a hospital in the ICU has met an angel. There are people who are so beautiful and caring that they are embodying and expressing angelic qualities. Now, biblical
right,
angels are very different things than what this sort of simplistic version of an angel being like this sweet, wonderful thing. From my understanding,
right.
Old Testament biblical angels are
They're scary as fuck. Yeah,
right. Yeah, they're terrifying. Um, and there are many, many stories all over the world of people encountering non-physical presences that
that's
are,
true.
yeah. Now, are they hallucinating it? Are they not? Whether it's a hallucination or not, it's having an effect on them. So the effect is real, you know. And if there's a solution to that effect, that solution is real. I have most certainly encountered what felt like non-physical, highly unfriendly beings
Hmm.
and highly beautiful ones. Um, and just sort of the way my mind works as an artist and a poet, I'm sort of more drawn to those descriptions and those thoughts, because they're
Hmm.
poetic. They're poetic. They're artistic. Um, I like it. Life makes a little more sense to me from that perspective. And there's a lot of evidence throughout history that these things are real, whether we encounter them or not. The Vedas, for example, go into great detail on lowercase g gods that have spaceships and came from other worlds. They name the planets that they came from, and they're a different race of beings. And whether this is mythology or not, the bigger thing right now is like all of us are dealing with an insane amount of anxiety and stress. There's a lot of fear. Where's our world going? There's more division. People are having a harder time having heart to hearts and communicating and connecting.
Hmm.
All connections happening through technology. People meet each other in person and they have a hard time connecting. There seems to be a divergence between people in two main directions. There's people who are becoming less accountable and more unreasonable and less logical and thinking critically less. And then there's people who are becoming more accountable, more reasonable, more thoughtful. They're
Hmm.
thinking critically more. It looks like it's left wing, right wing, pro gay, not gay, pro Israel, pro Hamas. What it looks like those outer expressions, but it's actually
Yeah.
a divergence. I know people in my own life who are so hardcore politically, but if you gave that individual $1 trillion in the military, they would be the most tyrannical asshole you've ever met in your entire life. They are essentially tyrants, you know, and then hypocritically talking about, oh, this group, I can't believe they're doing that. So, you know, Sam, to answer your question kind of like in a direct way, I hope, is you are here and you have capacity. When we're done with our podcast, both of us have decisions for the rest of the day. Whether we are going to lift someone up, lift ourselves up, or hurt someone, or hurt ourselves. And that is the spiritual battle that we're in. And it can help when we remember that if there is an inclination to harm self or others, that's impermanent. And we can go to war with that. We can fight that. We can recruit all kinds of help to fight that. And that there is something we want to take with us. Remembering death, memento mori, it's the most important thing. We don't want to die, and the last thought is, fuck, I wish I had said sorry to this person. Or, fuck, I wish I told this person I loved them. And that's reality. Reality is God. Even though you can argue that delusions are still reality, because they're delusions, but they're not connected to reality, and you can see the result of them. So someone can live their whole life saying, there's no God. Nothing I do matters. There's no consequence. And then they go steal money from a family that needed that money. And because they stole that money, that family suffers more. Just because they're a sociopath and they don't have any empathy for the suffering of the people doesn't mean that suffering is now not radiating throughout existence. That family suffering, their friends suffer because they're suffering, and that suffering radiates. And that person who stole from them is directly connected to that radiation.
But do you think like a person who doesn't subscribe to a God concept, they will automatically or likely become that person, or become like an attractor for negative energies, whatever you want to call it?
No,
because everything you say about utility and everything, I completely agree. But then when you talk about, and I think, you know, we've definitely had this conversation before, like even when you talk about lowercase g gods or spirits or something, I agree with like I don't know if I literally agree, but I agree with where you're going with it, if that makes sense.
Like your town in Munich, there are lowercase g gods there. Maybe it's, I don't know if you have a mayor or some powerful business person, but there are people in that community that can do things other people cannot. They could create vengeance and retribution, or bestow blessings and boons. And that order keeps going up. So maybe it's the sheriff, you know, but the sheriff answers to the mayor, and then the mayor's answering to someone else, and then that person's answering to someone else, and we can see this. The question is where does that structure of power stop? What's the actual peak of it? And we don't get to see that, you know, us down here on this level, we don't get to actually see. But we can infer that because there's always someone above someone else, that might continue. That might go into places we cannot see. Someone who doesn't believe in God can still be a wonderful person, but they're I don't know, is it belief in God or recognition of order? You know, recognition of cause and effect, recognition that what I do matters, recognition that what I do matters, and it has an impact. If there is no God, some people take that in the direction that what I do doesn't matter. If there is a God and people believe that, they also can convince themselves that what they do to other people doesn't matter because those other people don't believe in their God. You know, I think the bigger question is like, is this karmic thing real or not? Or did some people figure out a way to avoid it, you know, to circumvent it? But what matters most is, how do we make our life better, Sam? How do
Mm-hmm.
you be the best son you can be? How do you be the best partner you can be for your beautiful girlfriend who I saw on your post? I'm so happy to see you too. How do you be the best friend you can be? How do you lift this world up? How can you make this world? You know, it occurred to me when I was younger, during that realization, that everyone you meet is in the same execution line. We are all in an execution
Yeah.
line. And the order of which we get executed is unknown. And some people in that line are dealing with the terror by putting a blindfold on,
Mm.
and saying, it's not happening, it's not happening. Other people are thinking, well, shit, I'm just going to terrorize, and steal from this person. I'll make this person, what does it matter anyhow? We're all going to get whacked. And then there are some people who are serving other people food in that line,
Mm.
who are singing songs to help lift someone's spirit, who are taking care of someone's broken leg, who are caring for each other in that line. And it's a real question to think about. What's more brave? What's braver?
Yeah.
What's braver when you're in that line? Because it's not a question of anyone hearing this. It's not like, well, you're in that line, whether you know it or not. So what are you doing in the line? Did God create the line? Did the devil create the line? Oh, we're here. There's no way out
We're
of this
here.
thing. Even the people with all the advanced technologies, I know the God thing, right? I do believe there's groups of people that, or maybe they're not people, they're other types of beings, and they're in the pursuit of immortal physical life. And the
Mm.
Tibetans particularly, and I believe the Hindus also address this class of beings, that there are beings who live for hundreds of thousands of years, or uncountable millennia, uncountable eons, and they have tremendous power, and they have tremendous technology, but that they also die. And that their deaths actually are the worst deaths. That the best deaths are the one in the hell realms, because they all want to get out of there. They're all miserable. They don't die. You're in hell and you die. Oh, thank God. Thank you, God. Kill me.
Upgrade.
You're a celestial God, and you have worlds under your control and uncountable pleasures, and you die. Oh, horror, pure horror. This is how they describe it. And whether that's even true or not, Sam, on a greater outer level, we can see it here. There's that person in your community with the big house and the fancy cars and all the money. And then there's the homeless guy who's cracked out on heroin and has no one. There's the realms right there. I think there's ample evidence. I would debate anybody in the existence of a creator being, whether that's a capital G or a lowercase g, because creation is all around us. It's like we have no examples of an iPhone making itself.
The reason I would want to push back against that, because I do think that's like a false analogy, in the sense that I I do sympathize with your view, but I also, just because of my background, I know like a lot of Christian people, for instance, who like literally believe in like the 6-day creation, where I just don't think that that is real. I do think evolution is a process that is real and does explain a lot of things. I don't think that makes it impossible, though, for there to be, especially a lowercase g god, or lowercase g gods plural, that maybe started something that were responsible for the Big Bang or something. And I don't think we'll get to the bottom of this, but maybe it's just because of my background. I'm like a little allergic um to to creationism, in the sense that it would like completely, because I know people who just don't believe in evolution at all, and that's fine. It doesn't affect my life. It's just that I think the science for now a long time does give us a sort of narrative that doesn't necessarily exclude gods. I think if someone thinks that just because evolution might be true, that there cannot be a god, I just think that that is I think those two things are distinct. But I also recognize that evolution isn't necessarily like an iPhone. I don't think like nature wasn't necessarily designed in a sense that, like we evolved in our environment. That's why we can explain so many things about ourselves, about our characteristics, about our biological bodies. Like if you look at a certain plant, it makes sense that it's the way it is. If you look at the environment that it grew up in, um, but obviously an iPhone,
Well, that would be, creationism and evolution aren't mutually exclusive. You could have a creator being that created something that evolves. If you
sure, yeah,
were
yeah,
to, yeah, and if you were to say, I think a lot of the evolutionists don't think their position through very deeply. Like just if we take a few seconds to think about, okay, let's say evolution is real, then that means that the universe we know, we are not on the front end of the Big Bang. Well, we're back in it, so there are billions of years of evolution ahead of us.
maybe.
Like, that's what the scientists say. The evolutionists say this about the Big Bang. Well, if that's true, right now at our point, we have space travel, we have robots, artificial intelligence. So when we talk about creator beings, like, where the hell did these beings end up billions of years ahead of us? And again, all of these thought exercises are great. They help sharpen our critical thinking. I would like to be able to take any idea and look at it from as many different angles as possible, right? Make my critical thinking more robust, more sharp, more dynamic. At the end of the day, I want to make sure my room is clean, my car is clean, my relationships are strong, and that my mind is in my control. And it's not, I'm not. I'm in fights all the time. I'm super addicted to the social media, like the iPhone is very difficult addiction. Struggling with tobacco for 3 years, like I've got, romantic problems. I mean, it's like, what's giving us hope? And if someone says there is no hope, then they're saying that that's permanent. And we know that there's nothing permanent. Rinpoche, I think we could wrap up on this thought that Gaelic Rinpoche used to say this all the time to his students. I remember, and it brought me so much relief, and it brings me so much relief to this day. And he would say, watch out for the extremes of existence and non-existence. It is neither that we exist nor that we don't exist. The idea of nihilism or God, the idea of nothing matters or everything matters, they're thoughts. It's neither. You go to non-existence, you're suicidal and you're depressed. You go to the extreme of existence, you become a homicidal maniac, because you have to protect what is yours, and destroy every threat to yours, that is yours. So watch out for the extremes of existence and non-existence. Watch out for the extremes of a God or no God. And essentially, how do we make every day a little better if the inside of our hearts and minds is a storm, and it's a scary storm? How do we wake up and face it?
Yeah.
How am I running from it? Cigarettes is one of the ways. How do I face it? How do I have faith that storm will pass? Is there something I can do to help it pass? This is really what matters, I think. And if Christians praying to Jesus, if that gives them strength to be better people, which creates better experiences in life and helps radiate more positive things, that's wonderful. When they put the hooks in and, we have to destroy this entire village and kill all these people because they're pagans, and God, evolutionists, that is their God. God allows for really horrible things. And God's not some simplistic nice guy. And maybe some of the struggle that you and other Christians have is that when you're presented with this simplistic nice guy Disneyland thing, it puts a real sour taste in your mouth, and you want to just throw the whole thing out.
Yeah.
You know. But when I debated that evangelical preacher, the evangelical radio host in the studio, I told him, I said, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying you're more right than you know. Faith in a higher power, the order of there is an order to the universe. The order is visible. It's measurable. We can see it. Life can get better. There are solutions. There are solutions to all kinds of things. And I would argue that's because this is an intelligent creation that we're in and that we're a part of. And that there are little g gods, there are big G gods, and then there's something that's unfathomable, that's not explainable. Maybe, you remember Bob and Lucky, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Of course.
So Bob and Lucky my dogs gave me a beautiful realization once. I was at Verizon, the store Verizon, and the whole front of the building was all glass, and my van was parked right in front, so I could see right out and see them. And they were sitting in the front seats. Lucky was in the driver's seat, Bob was in the passenger seat, and the way they were sitting, it was like they could drive this vehicle. And some lady next to me was like, "Oh, were those your dogs?" And I said, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, you better be careful. They're going to drive off in your van." And for some reason, I took her literally. I'm like, they could never drive off in this van. They don't even have the biological capacity to drive it, let alone the mental capacity to fathom what they are in. And then it dawned on me, oh, that's probably like us. We might lack the biological capacity and the mental capacity to even fathom what we're in. And I'll share one other thing. I have a dear friend who's a Christian minister, and he and I have so many great debates and discussions. And I asked him once, I said, is humility a critical teaching of Jesus's? Is it like one of his foundational teachings? And he told me yes. And I said, okay, so what's more arrogant than thinking you have the only path to God? I mean, there is almost nothing more arrogant than that. So there's no way that the thought that your religion is the only true way has any humility in it.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm making much sense, but I think out of whatever I've said, there's probably little pockets that hopefully are helpful to someone listening. If you're in Detroit, I hope you guys come and check out the DMT. And Sam, if you can, if I'm ever in Europe, I'm hitting you up to help me get a DMT in Munich.
Yes, sir.
And how is the dance scene in Munich? Like, do you go out to clubs? Like, are the Germans, like, I imagine in my mind, they kick ass on the dance floor.
Honestly, Michael, I haven't been to a club since Detroit. Like Detroit, no, that's not true. One time after Detroit, I was in a club in the Netherlands, but I did not have a good time. So the last time I was a club person was in Detroit. I have no clue actually. So I don't know if I would be of help. I would definitely attend the DMT, but I know there are clubs here, and I know people go clubbing, and I know they enjoy it. But I have no clue, to be honest with you.
Are you practicing meditation or prayer? Do you have I know you have analytical meditation you're always doing, which is, analyzing thoughts and subjects and ideas. But have you been practicing anything like meditation-wise, or faith-wise?
Sitting meditation, not really. Maybe like 2 or 3 times in the past, like 2 or 3 years. I do like to think sometimes going on my little walks is a form of meditation. I think workouts are a form of meditation. I've been trying to pray every now and then, which is interesting because I don't know what I'm praying to. But it's nice. It feels good, and I don't know if it does anything, but Um, One time I prayed with my girlfriend, which was a really nice experience because I don't know if either of us believe in anything, but we had been talking about like, hey, we should pray together sometime. And it was kind of said as a joke, but I was like, no, I'm serious. Like, and then we did, and she did the praying, and it was really nice. It was like it doesn't really matter if someone's listening. It's more you're like conjuring up an energy that exists between you two, or just if you pray by yourself, it exists in yourself, and I think it helps maybe some intentionality, or it just helps focus your path, or your intentionality. Um,
From a
but
technique
yeah,
standpoint, right, it immediately produces humility.
hmm.
It's just like if you were wanting to learn carpentry and there's some very experienced carpenter in your town and you went to him and said, can I learn from you? Can you show me how to do something? That produces humility. I'm pretty sure, like, almost every religious, spiritual path that I've looked into and studied, Jesus said that before he was Jesus, he was the Word, and before creation, there was the Word. He's saying that before creation, he was there. That means he wasn't there as a he. He wasn't there as a 30-year-old Jewish guy. It was pre-creation.
Hmm.
So whether you pray to the Holy Spirit or whether you pray to Buddha, and the Buddha said the same thing, that Buddha's not the man. He's not the guy that died laying on his side. They all seem to be trying to point at something that's beyond thought.
Mm-hmm.
And when you pray, you could be, if you're praying to that, you're also not only creating humility, but you're building a connection to the part of you that is beyond creation. And consequently, where all creation is coming from.
The source.
And if you do pray together, you two will find answers. You'll find connection, inspiration. But of course, you have to also be attentive. Make sure your prayers are heading in the right direction. Some people, as you know, pray for, basically to be a shittier person. But we can practice building that connection. And it produces humility, insight, inspiration. It can give us strength. It can help us die with more bravery. It can help us live with more bravery. And if someone were to argue with me, well, is it true or not? Well, empirically it's true. Look at the effect it's having. This person's life has been lifted.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, I've taken more time of yours than I thought I would. You've been very generous. So I think this is a nice note to end on. Maybe I'll pray again soon. Maybe I'll definitely keep this conversation in mind, and especially as I edit it, I will rewatch it and have the ability to regurgitate everything we talked about. But thank you so much for sitting with Sam. It was really good talking to you and seeing you.
Sam, I always love our conversations. And I've missed you, and I like keeping track of your life on Instagram and always wishing you and your family the best in Germany. And I think, I'll say it ironically enough, God willing, our paths will cross in person again. And thank you for giving me 2 hours to sit here and ramble. I hope there's something that you can get useful from the edit.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
yeah, keep the prayer up. It's forget the prayer. Keep your exploration, and stay skeptical. Stay skeptical. Just also be skeptical of your skepticism. Then you're a true skeptic.
Meta skepticism. Yeah.
Meta skepticism, Sam.
Michael,
Lovely to
thank you
see you,
so
man.
much. Have a great day, okay?
All right, you too.
Namaste.
Namaste.